Hello, boils and ghouls and non-die scary people. Welcome to a very spooky episode of Thought Slime. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I give Thought Slime a spooky Halloween pun? It's because slime is already a Halloween thing. But for the record, Haunt Slime, Thought Scream, Count Cuckula, these were all in the running. Longtime Slimeheads might know that I love horror movies. Horror movies are my favorite thing. In fact, if you look through some of my videos, you might notice extremely subtle references to the hit film Ghoulies. Uh-oh, I made a YouTube channel about leftism. I can't just talk about horror movies, that's not what people come here for. They come here to talk about why capitalism is bad, and to leave comments explaining why they think I'm wrong about Batman. Quite a conundrum. How am I going to do the Halloween special I want to do? This is going to require all of my cunning. It's not like I can just slap together a BuzzFeed-style top 5 anti-capitalist horror movies and expect that to fly. But on the other hand, that's exactly what I'm doing, and you already knew that because it's in the thumbnail, and I don't make these videos up as I go along, I read from a script. In fact, you can see on my computer, this whole bit is scripted. None of this is up. Number 5. Dawn of the Dead, the good one. Dawn of the Dead tells the story of a group of people trying to survive zombie times at a shopping mall. Which is a pretty sweet place to hang out at zombie times, because, it's got all this stuff that you need for living. And you don't got to pay for it, because there's no police. There's just one problem with this setup. Zombies really want to get at that mall. Zombies are horny for this mall. But how come? There's nothing for zombies at the mall. Zombies don't have phones that they need cases for. Zombies don't shop at Forever 21. The characters in the movie speculate that it's because the zombies remember the mall from life. They know that it's a place they're supposed to go, but they don't really know why.
What are they doing? Why did they come here?
Some kind of instinct, memory, what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
In Dawn of the Dead, zombies are less scary and more pitiable. They're buffoonish, robbed of their dignity. It's scarier to become a zombie than it is to die. Being a zombie means you're more or less alive, but you don't have an identity. You don't have an internal life. You're just guided by instinct and your base impulses. And what do their base impulses tell them to do? To consume mindlessly and endlessly. And where do people go to consume mindlessly? A shopping mall. Well, that's where they would have gone in 1978. Nowadays they do it on Amazon.com, but you get the idea. Dawn of the Dead positions consumerism as a type of living death. You're compelled to consume things, but you don't really want to. It's just the only thing left to do. Oh, and I can already hear you typing up your comments right now. Actually, Casey, George Romero said that any anti-capitalist message is just incidental. He didn't mean it, he only noticed it in post. Dawn of the death of the author, you nerds. Any movie can be about anything I want and no one can stop me. Ironically, as the social order around them collapses, the characters in the movie are joyous. They revel in the freedom to do as they please. They work together to keep their small, tight-knit little community safe without anyone having to tell them to do it. Old prejudices break down and they start to rely on each other more and more. Maybe, without the subversive influence of capitalism and the state, people naturally get along. Learn to build safer and more egalitarian communities. Then they get attacked by guys on motorcycles, and man is the real monster, the end. Also, the remake fucking sucks. Zack Snyder sucks. Come at me. Number 4, The Stuff. There is a reason that I called this video Top 5 Anti-Capitalist Horror Movies, and not Top 5 Best Anti-Capitalist Horror Movies. Unlike the other films on this list, The Stuff is not a good movie, and I don't necessarily recommend that you watch it. It's extremely irritating to watch because Michael Moriarty insisted on improving all of his dialogue, and boy, does it show.
It's dinner time, but now why don't you just close up shop and we'll take you out for a bite to eat?
I've eaten already.
It's about an evil slime that is delicious and addictive, and if you eat enough of it, it starts to take over your brain, and you do its bidding. It eats you from the inside and then oozes out of your body. Naturally, if you find something like that, you put it in stores as a consumer good, called The Stuff. The film has fake commercials for the stuff, and it shows it in supermarkets alongside real products, and it even has fast food restaurants selling the stuff. The people who manufacture it know that it's dangerous, but they don't care, because it makes them fat stacks of that nasty cash. They go so far as to pay off or just murder FDA agents who are testing the stuff to see if it's safe. They even make a cruel joke of the stuff's hyper-addictive nature, turning it into a slogan, with the stuff, enough is never enough. Maybe that sounds a bit far-fetched, but it's really not. I mean, the evil slime is, but the stuff that the shareholders are doing isn't. Tobacco companies knew that their products were addictive and carcinogenic long before the public did and chose not to do anything about it because they were making mad cashish. Big Oil knew about climate change decades before the public did and chose not to do anything about that despite the fact that it might literally end all life on Earth. Because the money is more important than everyone being alive. Maybe that's why this stuff kind of falls flat for me. Because how do you satirize something like that? How do you exaggerate that behavior? Number 3, Alien. Alien is a screwball fish-out-of-water comedy about an alien aboard a spaceship full of humans. Talk about a culture clash. Along the way, they learn a little bit about each other and find out that living together on a spaceship isn't so easy. Hey, let me ask you a question about Alien. Who's the bad guy in Alien? Easy. Dave the alien, right? Wrong. The alien is just like a wild animal. It's a force of nature. It's an obstacle that the protagonists need to overcome. And it's also like a bunch of metaphors for sexual assault and the inherently invasive nature of pregnancy, but let's not get into that right now because other people have done it better. The real bad guy is Weyland-Yutani, the shadowy megacorporation that owns the ship the film takes place on, and also probably everything else in the future. They want to capture the dangerous alien and make weapons out of it. And this goal is so important to them that they explicitly state that their human crew is expendable. The crew is a crowd of rowdy space truckers, working stiffs who have a job to do and don't seem to appreciate the intrusion of Ash, Weyland-Yutani's corporate flunky. Ash is a bean counter, an explicitly amoral character, and oh, by the way, also a robot! In this movie, capitalism is so dehumanizing that the people who represent it are cold, uncaring machines, literally. And do you think that a future megacorporation wouldn't risk the lives of its workers for a potentially lucrative bioweapon like the alien? Because megacorporations are risking the lives of their workers right now digging for rare earth minerals, and that could be done safely. In Alien, capital is explicitly amoral. It's completely indifferent to human lives and views dangerous weapons as lucrative and valuable. Boy, imagine if something like that were real. Imagine if there was a corporation in the real world that sold crazy weapons with ludicrous destructive potential and didn't care about all the damage they caused. And they were just operating openly with impunity right now. Imagine how crazy that would be. Number 2, They Live. Very few movies leave as little room for interpretation as They Live. Maybe that's why it's like kind of the go-to movie for beginner film sophistry? Let me give you the gist of it. A construction worker played by Rowdy Roddy Piper finds a pair of magic sunglasses that allow him to see secret messages in the media. These messages subliminally tell human beings to be complacent, to obey, to consume, to marry and reproduce, that money is their god. Aliens put these messages in place to keep humanity docile, and the aliens look like us unless you view them through the magic sunglasses. Get it? The sunglasses are class consciousness. Hope you get it, because that's the whole metaphor. While the other movies I've discussed so far view capitalism as a sort of self-prison, a weakness of character that people give into, They Live presents it as a method of social control. Aliens, read the rich and powerful, have not only limited our options, but they've also limited our ability to perceive our options. It's not simply that people give in to capitalism because they enjoy having lots of consumer goods. It's because an extremely powerful brainwashing apparatus has convinced them that there is no alternative. And that's kind of how the media operates now. Noam Chomsky's propaganda model says that subversive messages are filtered out so that the only conceivable options are those that are favorable to capital.
Now, the elite media are the agenda-setting media. That means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the major television channels, and so on. They set the general framework. Local media more or less adapt to their structure. In other words, if the press is indeed adversarial and liberal and all these bad things, then how can I go beyond it? They're already so extreme in their opposition to power that to go beyond it would be to take off from the planet.
You can also look at Mark Fisher's capitalist realism. where he talks about how capitalism ensures that capitalism is the only economic model people can consider. And just real quick, we have to address the elephant in the room. If you're one of the ding-dongs that wants to interpret They Live as like a secret black-pilled message about how the Jews control the media, you can fuck right off. You should know that John Carpenter, who directed the film, explicitly said that's not the case and hates your fucking guts. Forget what I said about Death of the Author earlier. I believe in auteur theory now because it's convenient for my argument. Number 1. Society. Oh boy. If you thought that They Live was explicit and didactic about its message, Society might as well be an open call for revolution. Other movies on this list might criticize elements of capitalism, but Society is really the only one that I would call class-conscious. In Society, the rich are literally a different species, a predatory species that feeds on the poor. They're an aristocratic class of goo monsters. And like all aristocrats, they're incestuous sex creeps. They seem to have no real motivation, aside from like decadence and predatory sexuality and alleviating their terminal boredom. Humans can never mingle with them, can never really be truly among them. The main character is a human who's adopted and raised by goo monsters, but that's just the joke that they're pulling on him. They're doing that to make fun of the idea that he could ever be one of them, and they just want to eat him. In the world of Society, class mobility is an illusion. It's a carrot dangled in front of you to make sure that you play along. But secretly, the rich are laughing at you behind your back. You'll never be one of them. You couldn't. We're fundamentally different. The eponymous Society controls the politicians, they control the school system, they control the police. They make certain that nobody can see them for what they are, and anyone who does is immediately silenced and consumed by the corrupt systems that they enforce. You can't expose them because they control all of the mechanisms that would allow you to expose them, and all authority does the bidding of Society. From that description, you might be tempted to view this as like a conspiracy theory movie, but it goes deeper than that. This isn't about a group of aliens infiltrating our society and taking it over, like They Live is. In They Live, aliens take over our society, and we're left to assume that at some point our society was good, it was just, and then the aliens perverted it. But the creatures in Society have always lived on Earth. They've always been in control. The systems that we take for granted as natural and inevitable were designed by a parasitic class of literal assholes. The world has always been controlled by rich and powerful goo monsters. The female lead of the film, Clarissa, who is herself a goo monster, recognizes the cruelty of the system, perhaps because she knows it all. She chooses to defect with Billy, the human protagonist. The Society creatures don't need to live the way that they do. It's not an essential component of their biology. They just like it. They think that their pleasure is more important than the suffering it causes humans, and in this film, humans are analogous to poor people. If I, a leftist radical, wrote this movie, my leftist radical pals would tell me to tone it down a notch.
Get down, goblins! Get down, goblins! Get down, goblins! Get down!
I don't think that any of these movies were made with the intent of turning people against capitalism. I do think that framing them that way can make an anti-capitalist message a whole hell of a lot easier to communicate to people. And in a way, I think horror movies are uniquely positioned to do this. I mean, what is a horror movie if not a commodification of death and suffering? Horror movies are considered more mercenary than other film genres. They're cheap and easy to make. They usually turn a big profit at the box office. Even if they're terrible! And even when a horror movie is artful and meaningful, it produces scores of cheap, shitty knockoffs and shitty sequels. Producers and critics alike tend to view them as cynical cash grabs. Spectacle without substance that delivers cheap, almost pornographic thrills. And I think a lot of that belief is rooted in classism, because horror movies are low art. Which is probably why a few of you scoffed at the idea that Alien is a horror movie. Alien's not a horror movie, it's an important movie. In other words, hoity-toity types tend to ignore horror movies. They're for the unwashed masses. And what better place to reach the people disaffected by capitalism? Big thanks to my spooky patrons this month. They're all haunted. Hey, what do you think of my list? Do you agree with it? Leave a comment below to tell me what movies you think I missed. I promise, I actually care what you think. I promise that this isn't a desperate plea for engagement, to trick the algorithm into thinking my content is more relevant than it actually is. Make sure to subscribe and click the stupid bell so that you actually get notifications when I upload content, which I thought was the whole point of being subscribed, but apparently you've got to do a second thing. Make sure to gently press that like button too. Please don't smash it. Stop smashing the like button, just press it normally. YouTube makes me pay for all these like buttons, and it's bankrupting me. Have a safe and fun Halloween, and please don't do a racist costume.